All right, folks, it appears as though we had some technical difficulties. We started this operation, and then our hardware-software interface gave us a user error, so we're starting over because I just called Al Gore about his internet thing, and he said, we're okay. So I hope you can get whatever is being fed through this live stream. Anyhow, this is episode number 4 of Elk Talk Live, the Q&A session, the question and answer that we're doing with Bowtech, with Leupold Optics, and with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And like we said last week, in June, we have a really big prize that we're giving away. It's a Reign 7 from Bowtech, the Smart Bow. And to get in the contest, to be in the drawing, no purchase necessary, all you got to do is text Randy, R-A-N-D-Y, to 313131, or if you're in Canada, 393939. So the thing you could do to really help us is to share this with all your friends. And we don't know if this feed is coming through on Facebook or not. We know it's coming through on live stream and on all of our web pages, but we're not seeing it on the Facebook feed. So the good news is we have a whole host of questions from last week that we can go to that we never got answered. So please be sharing this if you're seeing it on your Facebook page, and go to the live stream and ask us the questions. But here, last week, the winner of the Leupold Slingo bag was Chad, and he had this question. It was, how do you plan your hunts in regards to leaving the truck in the morning or base camp? Do you map out a plan to set to a destination, or do you keep to a game plan, or let the animals and sign tell you where to go and worry about everything else later? For me, when I leave the truck, I've got a plan in mind. I know I've got about an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours to get to my glassing spot. And when I leave the truck, I've got a plan. But on my way there, I might hear something, I might see something. The conditions may be different, that I see fresh tracks and some snow. I usually have a plan of what I'm going to do for the first half of the day. And when I'm up there, I'm kind of looking, gauging, listening. If it's an archery hunt, I'm doing a lot of listening. And then I let the conditions in the elk kind of guide me to what I'm going to do the last half of the day. And then when I'm done that night, when I'm walking out in the dark, my mind is saying, all right, what is my plan for the next day? What am I going to do the next morning when I get up? And I usually do that. So anyhow, that's the question that Chad asked last week. Another good question is, what game bags do we use, and why do we use the ones we use? I use synthetic game bags, and I'll tell you why. A lot of people will say, oh, use the cotton ones, go get some sheets or some pillowcases down at the Goodwill, and those will suffice. If you're in really arid country, that will suffice. If you're in a place that gets any moisture, any snow, any rain, or has high humidity, cotton will not wick the moisture like the synthetic game bags. And eventually, someday, you'll learn the hard way, like I did, that cotton will fail you sooner or later, and you'll have some spoilage of meat. So for me, I use synthetic game bags. I use the ones from Caribou Game Bags. They're reusable. You can get them in a multitude of styles and sizes. And all you got to do is take them home, just wash them, soak them, rinse them, hang them up, and dry, and you're ready to go. The other part is, if you use the cheesecloth kind of game bags, you've all seen them. You take an elk quarter and you hang that. The mesh in that cheesecloth opens up enough that a fly can get its tail in there and plant eggs through that cheesecloth into your meat. And as quick as you get eggs in there, you're going to get these little creepy crawlers. They call them maggots. And that's no fun. So with that, I use the synthetic game bags by Caribou Game Gear. How long do I usually hang elk meat in the field? It depends. If it's really warm, obviously you got to do something to take care of that meat sooner rather than later. If it's November and it's not getting above 30 degrees during the day, I'll hang it for days at a time. The caveat to that is there's some things, no matter what time of year it is, that you can do to allow your game to hang there longer. Get on the shady side of a slope, or even if it's in a grove of trees. get somewhere on the edge of that grove of trees or somewhere where some wind is going to pass through there, because wind will cool it off way, way faster. If it's going to be raining, get some sort of canopy, a tarp, something over it so that it doesn't get wet. If it's really hot and you need to drop the temperature, you can do this little trick. Find a little creek if you can, because there's evaporation happening on that creek, and the water temperature, or the air temperature from that water, will be anywhere from 5 to 10 degrees cooler. So hang it just right over the top of where the creek is flowing. It might take some work to build some cross members and stuff to hang it, but you'll be surprised how much cooler that will keep your meat. All right, fixed or mechanical blades for elk. You're gonna get, you ask this to 100 people, you'll get 220 answers probably. For me, I am going with fixed blades. Mechanicals, some of the energy is absorbed in opening the mechanical device. Also, a fixed blade has a greater tendency to have a full pass-through if possible. A full pass-through gives me two sides where there's going to be blood going out. If you talk to the guys who kill lots of elk with archery gear, just about all of them have been through the whole spectrum and back and forth a little bit. And those guys, most of them I know and I talk to who I respect, are fixed blade people, and I end up just going there. I'm kind of a conservative, old school guy when it comes to that. So I know some of you might shoot mechanicals, have a whole different opinion, and that's fine. Oh, let's see, what's your advice for harvesting a cow in archery season? I drew a cow tag in South Dakota and know the area to find elk. I was just wondering what strategy you would suggest to get within bow range. All right, cow hunting, food, right? It doesn't matter what time of the year, whether it's early season, pre-rut, peak rut, post-rut, whatever, cows are looking for food. So generally you're going to be, you want to be hunting near where the cows are, which is where the good feed is. And then as far as a tactic, with cows, I would try to get in front of them, either because they're going to their bed and intercept them there, or they're coming from their bed to feed, intercept them there, or they're coming to water. That's going to be the easiest way to consistently get within archery range of cow elk. So, what website do you use to see past burns? All right, whoever asked this question has been observing our footage and our photographs that we're always hunting in burns. And you hear me talk about it all the time. Burns are like the grocery table. This is like the Dairy Queen. This is the steakhouse for elk. Because when it burns within a year, sometimes even sooner, it just gets green. And elk are looking for the greenest, best food they can find. Well, the place to find those burns, there's a bunch of public domain websites. There's a site called InciWeb, INCIWEB, that'll give you the current year stuff. And if you're really a good GIS guy, you can go back and find a bunch of the old stuff. The easiest way to do it is if you have one of these smartphone, go to Onyx Maps and download their Hunt app service. It has all the burns going back, I think, to 2000. It'll tell you what age, how many acres. I mean, I just gave you one of my best secrets right there about how I find old burns. And now I'm going to find some of you guys hunting the same burns I am. But anyhow, if you go get the Onyx Hunt app system and you use promo code RANDY, R-A-N-D-Y, they'll give you 20% off. I know you like to hunt burns. Would you hunt the very next year after a burn, and how many years would you go back? Yes. I might hunt it the next month after a burn because there's these little green shoots coming out if you've had moisture. For sure, I'd hunt it the next year. How long will I hunt it? As long as it is the best food around. So it might start getting to be older forage, kind of decadent after 5, 6, 7 years. But if there's been no other burns nearby, they're still going there. But if in the 4th year, all of a sudden you have another burn, that next year when this burn's 5 and the other burn is 1, I'm going to hunt the 1-year-old burn. So, Randy, if you had a 3-day drive home from Montana, then how would you pack and care for the meat without it going bad? Happens to me all the time. We did a video of it out on our YouTube channel. Go to Randy Newberg Hunter. You see hundreds of videos out there. This one we talk about how we keep meat cold on our way home for days We've been on many hunts in, say, New Mexico or Arizona, and by the time we get camp broke down, by the time we film the last closing segments, that costs us most of a day, and then I got a 2-day drive home. It's all about getting the meat cool before you put it in a cooler, and having a strategy to have ice with you when you leave. I use frozen milk jugs, and if you watch that video, you'll see I have these Orion coolers. I have one cooler with nothing but frozen milk jugs. I never open it, nothing. So then, when I kill that elk, I let it hang at least overnight to get the temperature really cool. I want that meat. I don't want to be putting meat that is warm in a cooler. I want it to be as cool as possible when I put it in the cooler. At night in the West, we have these diurnal temperatures. The cooler's gonna cool off at night. That's when I'm gonna put them, right away in the morning, I'm putting the meat in that cool cooler. That's the coldest time for that cooler, is when the evening and nighttime temperatures brought it down. Put the meat in there, then I'm putting the ice on top, because heavy air, or cold air is heavier, and it's gonna go down into the meat. I'm gonna seal that up, and I am not gonna look at it. If you really wanna shorten the life of your ice, your cooler, everything else, keep looking. All of a sudden, whew, all that coldness goes out of there. Whew, all it goes out of there, and then it takes all that ice, all that energy to cool it back down. So it can be done. I do it a lot, and I know a lot of guys who live back east who will go to Colorado and they got a 2 or 3 day drive home. They still figure out how to do it. So, do you apply in lower population units as a strategy to get away from high hunter densities? If you do, what strategy do you use to locate elk in those areas? Yes, I do. People are catching on to me, and I don't know if I have anything worth catching on to, but I do apply in areas with low densities. Mostly because it's easier to get tags, and I need 10 to 12 tags a year to film a TV season. So that's the biggest part of why I do it. But usually, even in those low density areas, you're gonna have lower hunter pressure, like the person asked. And with lower hunter pressure, it's usually easier to find what elk are there. Now, I don't wanna go into some place where the densities are so low that, you know, there's a unit that's 400 square miles and there's only 40 elk. No, I'm not doing that. There's always this kind of intersection of, all right, where's the lowest density or the highest density that still has good drawing odds? And that's what I look for. Is dry ice a good option to keep meat cool? Yes, it can be. Just know that there's some issues with dry ice. If you're flying, you need to make sure the airline knows. Dry ice will definitely help, and it's more expensive, but if you're going on a long route, don't discount using dry ice. Do I play the thermals in the morning and evening? Yes. If you don't play the thermals, the odds are you're not going to see many elk. Or what you see of elk are going to be rumps and antlers and hoofs going over the ridge. In the West, I cannot overemphasize how important these thermals are. In the morning, when the air is cool, it's sinking, and you're going to have this mostly downhill thermal flow. And then as the air starts to warm, when the sun comes up, you get a little bit of a mix where on the shaded side of a slope, maybe there's a little cut, it's going downhill. On the sunny side, it's going uphill. You go around the corner, it's the other direction. It doesn't usually get consistent again and switch directions and go uphill is what it does in the afternoon when it gets warmer, because hot air rises. It usually doesn't get that steady thermal until noon, 1 o'clock, and then in the evening, it reverses itself again. But in between, you have these periods of kind of turmoil, just really hard to read the wind. Have a wind checker with you. I don't care if it's rifle hunting or archery hunting. Have a wind checker with you if you are hunting elk. You cannot fool an elk's nose, no more than you can fool the nose of an old whitetail buck. Randy, I drew an either sex tag in Colorado on the Utah-Colorado border, mostly public land during the fourth season. What other tools can I use to see which roads are open and closed once it gets closer to season? This depends on if it's BLM land, if it's Forest Service land, if it's state trust land, whatever. I always go to whatever agency owns that land, and I look at their website. In the forest is the easiest. The Forest Service has their travel management maps just about always published on the website for that forest. So I don't know what forest this would be where you're hunting, but you could go to that website. The BLM sometimes has their travel management maps. It says this road's open, this road's closed, this road's open seasonally or whatever. Go and contact the agency. If you can't find a map, make sure you contact the agency and they will tell you which roads are open and which roads are closed. Do you bother using calls in the pre-rut period? Oh yeah. Yeah, to me that pre-rut period is actually a very effective time to use calls. You might have silent bulls come in when you're calling, so keep your eyes peeled. But that pre-rut period is when the bigger bulls are kind of getting close to the cows and posturing, and you'll hear some fighting and a little bit of rattling and of their antlers when they're sparring a little bit. That pre-rut period can be very, very, very effective time to call bull elk. Where is the balance between rifle weight and recoil? Well, that question is a person who understands physics. The lighter rifle you have, let's say it's the same caliber, let's say it's a 7mm mag. If a really light rifle is going to create more recoil than a heavier rifle. For me, it's that intersection of where I want to go as light as possible until recoil starts affecting my accuracy or my ability and desire to practice a lot. And some people say, well, put a muzzle brake on it. I never put a muzzle brake on anything. It's bad for your hearing. It's bad for everybody's hearing around you, beside you, behind you. If you need a muzzle brake, this is my opinion, you've probably stepped too far beyond what you need as far as reducing weight or what caliber / cartridge you're shooting. Find where you can get the best intersection of weight as light as possible with recoil that doesn't affect your shooting performance. Seems like most of your hunts are limited entry. Do you ever hunt over the counter? I hunt over the counter a lot, whether it's for elk, whether it's for deer. At Colorado, I think we've done 4 or 5 over the counter elk hunts in Colorado. We've done quite a few of them here in Montana. So I do all my deer hunts in Montana are over the counter. Last year I did Arizona deer over the counter. Some states are just all limited entry for non-residents. So Nevada, you're not doing over the counter. Colorado deer, you're not doing over the counter. Wyoming elk, you're not really doing over the counter. So we do quite a few of them. All of our bear hunts, except for Alaska, are over the counter. So we go do as many of those as is needed to fill the schedule also. Is scent control worth it, or do you just play the wind? Well, to me, playing the wind is scent control. I think this might be someone who whitetail hunts, who in tree stands, a lot of guys are very scent conscious. I play the wind. I don't worry about all these, I call them concoctions, whatever you want to call them, scent products. Don't worry about it. I try to stay as clean as I can. Obviously, I'm not stomping around in a gasoline pile or, anything foolish, but my theory is if I'm elk hunting and I get in some situation where I have to be relying on scent control products, that elk has already smelled me. Because on public land elk hunts, you cannot keep from perspiring. It is that exerting. You're going to be moving. It's a very aggressive, very active game. You just got to know how to play the wind. Is it better to sit over a wallow / watering hole or stock in the mid-afternoons if you don't have a bull located? If you don't have a bull located, it's hard to stock. So to answer that question, your best option is going to be sit over a wallow, sit over a water hole, someplace where you know they're likely to come. If I can, and you guys have seen this on some of our TV shows, and you're going to see one here in about 2 weeks, where we'll watch bulls go in bed in the shade and we'll spot and stock them. Let's see, how do you find good potential glassing locations from a map if you've never been to the area? Well, I would suggest anybody get familiar with reading topo maps. And again, I tell you, I have the Onyx map system, whether it's Google Earth, whatever you use, you'll be able to see when you lay the contour layer on there. It's going to show you where some points, some peaks, some juts are out of the terrain, it's a rock pile or whatever. And those are great glassing points. you're going there to glass, not necessarily shoot. If you can glass and shoot from there, both, hey, better. But a lot of times I'm picking a spot that might be 800, 1200, 1,000 yards away from where I think I'll see elk. So I'm not worried about a shooting location, I'm worried about a glassing location. And for me, that's something that pushes me out from the relief and topography or up from the carpet of maybe it's pinyon juniper, maybe it's dark timber, whatever. You'll find those very easily on topo maps. Most of your hunts are only a few days long. Really? What contributes to your harvest success in such minimal time? Obviously, we are doing something wrong in editing because all of our hunts just about always take the full 5 days. Not always, but we grant ourselves 7 days for an archery hunt and 5 days for a rifle hunt. And very often, it's the last day when we do it. Now, understand that on TV, you can only do a 22-minute episode. In other words, the content's 22 minutes, the network commercials are the other 8 minutes. So if we've been there for 7 days, it might look like it was easy, that we were running into elk all the time. Often that's not the case. We don't want you to sit through Randy walking for 10 minutes, so you end up seeing us cut a lot of pieces. Now, we just did a bear hunt that you'll see, if you go out to our YouTube channel, we did a semi-live Montana bear hunt. We hunted for 12 days. Every night we'd go film, we'd edit it and put it up on YouTube the next morning. We never killed a bear. So we proved that now this isn't always a minimal amount of time. Sometimes we get lucky. We are fortunate that we get to hunt a lot. So we're accustomed to showing up at places we've never been, have only 5 days to figure it out, sort it out, and pack it out. And hopefully over years and years of doing that in multiple places, multiple season types, we've gotten pretty good at it. But I don't think that we're experts in any stretch. What hunt are you looking most forward to this fall? Well, Montana just released this week on Monday, so today's Wednesday, it's moose, goat, and sheep results. Moose, goat, and sheep results. And I've got a really good elk hunt I'm looking forward to in Arizona, another one in Wyoming. But my son drew one of the most coveted moose tags in all of Montana. So even though I don't have the tag, for Matthew and I to be out there hunting again, that's the one I'm looking forward to. At this point in my life, if I never kill another elk, I've killed more than my share. And for me, it's about who I get to spend the time with, how much time do we get to spend together, going to cool places, cool landscapes with cool stories. And this moose hunt's gonna be the one that's kind of highlighted on my calendar. Would you prefer to hunt opening day archery or wait until a little later in the archery season? I hunt later in archery season. And I say that based on the idea that in most instances, archery seasons open in early August or late August or early September. I'm one of those guys that if you let me have my way, I'm gonna hunt elk in archery season from September 10th till October 5th, somewhere in there. I know some people say, oh, I want the first crack at them. You know what, knock yourself out. I like it later because the rutting activity is gonna be better, the weather's likely to be a little bit cooler, and most people have had their fill of it by then, so fewer people in the woods for me to compete with. All right. How do you figure out if you should call or keep silent? You know, until I started hunting with my buddy Corey Jacobson, I was always worried about that. Corey has taught me when all else fails, call more. Call a lot, but if you're struggling, call more. I've adopted that, and it's amazing how many responses I get from elk. So for me, it's about, I'm gonna call, and Corey has a good analogy. He says it's kind of like fishing. If you see fish on your fish finder and they aren't biting, call them carp and move on. Go find the ones that wanna bite. If you got elk that don't wanna respond, you know what? Come back to them later. Go find the ones that wanna play. Makes sense. Let's see, do you prefer carrying lots of water or equipment for filtration and treatment? I carry a 3-liter platypus water bladder with me. I cannot get dehydrated. If I get dehydrated, I've got a strange liver condition that it's a major problem for me, so I carry a lot of water. I don't want to count on I'm going to be able to find filterable or treatable water when I'm out there. A lot of times, especially in the states where it's really dry and arid, the only stuff there to treat is from cattle tanks or some sort of old skanky tank or dirt pond. I'm not treating water out of that. Up here in the Northern Rockies where we got water in every drainage, yeah, I'm less concerned about it, but I carry as much with me as I can. If you are rifle hunting with 2 or more buddies, would you recommend splitting up or staying together? Split up. There's no sense in being stacked over the top of each other. The more you split up, the more terrain you can cover. One guy might be seeing them, the other 2 aren't. Guess what? Figure out what was different where the one guy was seeing them and the other 2 weren't, and go replicate what was going on where the guy was seeing them. Always split up if you can. I know you're not really picky on the elk you choose, but how many times do you go into a hunt with an idea of an elk you want to take and stick to it with no grouse around to distract you? All right, you guys know I've got a grouse issue. You know, that's a good question, and I'd say over the course of my hunting life, it's changed. When I first started elk hunting, I was looking for just any legal animal, and I was so happy when I finally shot one that it didn't matter how big it was. And then I went through a little bit of a phase where I was being a little more particular. Now it's just about, is this what I wanted out of the hunt? And it doesn't matter if it's a younger bull, an older bull, big, small, a cow, whatever. It's more about, does this represent why and what this hunt is all about? Don't get me wrong, if there's 2 bulls standing there and one's a 3.5-year-old and one's a 7.5-year-old, I'm shooting the 7.5-year-old, just like all of us will. So, let's see. In a unit that is sliced up with roads, would you opt for a wilderness area or just find small pockets among the roads? Not even a question. I'm going to the roadless area. Whether it's true designated wilderness area or a roadless area, wilderness study area, just a place where maybe it's none of those, and it's just a spot where topography is so steep that you can't get roads in there. I'm going to those places because I'm mostly hunting. If you think about the elk calendar, most of my hunts, just by the fact of how little hunting opportunity there is in the peak rut, most of mine's going to be post rut or late season. Well, in those places, the elk aren't, or those times of year, the elk are in sanctuary mode. I'm going in the ugly, nasty places to find them. When hiking into wild areas, what do you consider too far? The older I get, that distance is shrinking. You got to use your mind and your common sense on this a little bit. You don't want to hike in 10 miles and have to be packing an elk out 10 miles. Trust me, I've shot some in some long distance places. I've had friends shoot them in places and you just shake your head and say, why did I do this? Fortunately, in those instances, it was cold, so the elk wasn't going to spoil. Think hard about, all right, what would I do if I shot something here? For me, once I start getting a mile from the road or trail, I'm thinning out a lot of people. By the time I'm 2 miles, I'm close to having it to myself. So I'm usually past a mile, most likely 2 miles, but anymore, very seldom am I at any point more than 5 miles from the trailhead. But in the course of my day, zigzagging and looping around, sometimes we're putting on 10 to 12 mile days every day for a week in a row. So I live in North Carolina. How can I find an over-the-counter elk tag? It's easy. Right now you can go to Colorado and you can get one for archery season, the 2nd rifle or the 3rd rifle. You can go to Idaho and get one right now for archery or rifle season. Montana, most of them sold out this year. There's a few that are still there. People are turning them back in and you can get one there. So right there's 3 really quick ways. If you want to go cow hunting, Colorado has a whole list of leftover cow tags. Wyoming has a list of leftover cow tags. So whether you live in North Carolina or anywhere, there's a ton of options. We have a YouTube video out there actually that says hunt elk every year, and you should. And here's a thought on that. A lot of people will wait 20 years to draw the tag of a lifetime. And in those 20 years, they've been not elk hunting. Well, they draw this great tag and they have hardly any elk hunting experience. That is a tough slope to climb. go out and do it. Even if it's not for the big old age class bulls, just go and do it. It's so much fun. I mean, especially archery season. Bugling elk do something to the human body, the human soul, that kind of is, it's addicting. And it will then force you to say, I want to chase these things in rifle season. I want to chase these things anytime. So go and do it. There's so much opportunity. And also, if we are now live on Facebook, which I'm not sure if we are, but if we are, please be sharing this with your friends. And if you want to be in the drawing for the Bowtech Reign 7 Smart Bow, the big prize for June, text Randy to 313131. And if you're in Canada, 393939. So, all right, what else we got here? If you get a bull that is responding to calling, do you sit tight and wait for him to come to you, or do you move in on him? Whew, I'm going. They're not coming to you as a general rule. You see that? I mean, if there's one thing about TV that I think ruins a lot of elk hunting, it's you see people on these ranches where the elk have never been molested, that you have 40 cows with a big herd bull and you have 10 satellite bulls. And the guy blows his flute and all of a sudden here a satellite bull comes running in. That's not how it happens on public land. In most instances, if that bull has cows, he's taking those cows and he's going away unless you get within his comfort zone. Get within his comfort zone and get him uncomfortable, get him mad, and then he will come to you. He's not coming 200, 300, 400 yards to your calling. You better be really close. You need to represent a threat to him before he's going to come and check you out, if he's the herd bull. Some of the satellite bulls, yeah, they'll come over the knob, the 100 yards, but as a general rule, get as close to that bugle as you can and challenge him. How do you hunt an area with predominantly south-facing slopes? Depends on the time of year. South-facing slopes might not be all bad, but as a general rule, I don't. What I'll do is I'll hike to get out of that drainage so I can glass some northeast or northwest-facing slopes, possibly some full east-facing slopes. Don't just deal or accept what the landscape deals you. Get on a trail, get on your feet, and go hike to places that have a variety of terrain, a variety of slope exposures, because you never know where the elk are going to prefer. And once you find them in that spot, you'll probably be able to replicate that by looking in similar type of locations. How long does it generally take you to skin and quarter an elk? Usually I have a camera guy with me, so I've done it by myself before, but usually if it's me and another person, we can get an elk taken care of in less than 2 hours. And we've got the video out there on our YouTube channel. It's called the Gutless Method, and it's got tens of thousands of downloads of people watching how we do it. And once you do it, it's not that hard. We've even done the same thing with a whitetail, because we know a lot of you live in places where you don't have an elk to practice on. Well, guess what? If you want to practice this gutting or this gutless method of boning and quartering, practice on a whitetail at home if you don't live where there are elk, because everything is pretty much the same on an elk. It's just a matter of size and scale. Don't show up in Colorado in September. The first time you have to do this is when you're on some steep slope and it's 80 degrees out, because that's not a good time to have to learn. Let's see. Have you ever taken your wife elk hunting? Yes, and I wish she was sitting here right now and could tell some of the stories about us elk hunting. The very first time we went elk hunting, I used to wear glasses before I had LASIK surgery. My glasses fogged up, and we stopped, and all of a sudden here comes an elk, and she's like, look at that big thing. I'm like, where? I can't see the darn thing. Drop my glasses, now I can't see anything either. And I hand her the rifle, I'm like, shoot it. And by the time that whole fiasco exchange of, I guess, colorful words finished, she had taken a shot of an elk parting over the ridge, and I got a lot of those. But my wife used to hunt with me a lot, and she's a way better shot than I am. She's a way better hunter than I am. But now she says, you bring it home, I'll enjoy it, but it's up to you. How would you hunt thick country where glassing game is hard? I would go someplace that's not as thick. I'd find disruptions in that thickness. And it might just be an avalanche chute. It might be a small burn. It might be a small rock pile. It might be something very small. I'm hunting edges. I'm hunting disruptions to the landscape where elk prefer to feed, but yet is close to where they can go and find safety and bedding. I don't hunt these big blanketed carpet of dark timber. There's some elk in there. The densities are usually very low. It's very difficult hunting. So I just go and find other places. In a lot of wilderness areas with no cell service, what is a good GPS setup? Well, you can go with the traditional handheld GPS. I have a Garmin Montana. It's a 600. They don't even make it anymore, but that's what I use. The other thing is these right here. Smartphone has a GPS in it, and a lot of people say, oh, I don't have cell service. What do I do? Well, this GPS works whether you have cell service or not. What will kill you is your battery will die because it's always searching for service, so put it on airplane mode. And then use this. Just make sure that you have a way to recharge this if the battery does die. So we're pushing along here, but since we had a slow start, we had to hit the reset button here when the internet kind of flaked out on us. We're gonna do one or two extra questions. What's your layering system for clothes? Those of you who watch our content know that I wear Sitka gear. Sitka gear is based on a layering system. And it depends on the time of year, obviously, but I always start with the base layer of merino. It might just be a merino top, and then on top of that, I usually have just a vest. When I leave the trailhead, that's all I'm hiking with. If it's warmer weather, I'm just going with my merino top and whatever pants I think are comfortable. In my pack, I have the rest of the layers because when I get to the top of that ridge, and I've been hiking for 2 hours, I'm sweating. Maybe it's November and it's cold and windy. First thing I do is I stand there and I let the wind take all this moisture off me, and then I start stacking my layers. If it's really hot, layering's really not an issue. So I'm mostly thinking about layering in the later part of elk season. And I'm wanting to do something that evaporates the moisture from my surface quickly. Once it's evaporated, then I'm looking for some sort of space, air pockets that create insulation. And then my outer layer is always something that is protecting me from the weather with a really good DWR finish. Probably, in my case, my elk hunting uniform, if you go to the Sitka website, is just about always in the late season, Jetstream jacket with layers underneath it with a Timberline pant. Last question. What knife or tools do you use to skin and quarter an elk? Is it worth the money to get the whole set of knives? If you go and watch that gutless video that we have, it's pretty simple. You'll see what I use. If all I have, if weight is such an issue that I can't bring a bigger knife, I have a Gerbil scalpel blade, replaceable blade, Vital. It's a little orange plastic handle knife, and you can replace the blades when they get dull. That is my go-to. Now, if weight isn't a big issue, I also have a Gator Premium. These are a really, really stout knife. I think the steel on it is S30V, if I remember right. And that thing will cut like you can't believe. And sometimes when you're taking the head off, doing a European mount, you really want something strong that you can really reef in there. And those scalpel blade knives sometimes just don't allow for that. So if you look in my pack, and we've done a bunch of bag dumps also that will out on our YouTube channel that'll show you the knives I carry. But I have a Gerber Vital, and then often I have the Gerber Gator Premium. So I think that's going to be a wrap, folks. Thanks so much for watching. Please continue to share this with all your friends, all your hunting folks. Have all your questions ready for next week. Hopefully we don't have a technical difficulty right out of the gate. And thanks to Bowtech, to Leupold, and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation for making all of this possible. And again, if you want to get in the drawing for the grand prize, the big prize we have in June, the Bowtech Smart Bow, the Reign 7, text Randy, R-A-N-D-Y, to 313131. And with that, it's a wrap for another week, and I think we're done. Thanks for watching. Are we done, guys? Are we going Dairy Queen? Are we done? What?